Alrighty, everyone. Well, thank you I hope you all had a nice lunch. Was lunch good? Everybody have a good lunch? Great. Good. Well, welcome back. And we have more amazing content for you now. But what I want to share first is in 2000, how many of you were here in 2013? Okay, great. I love that. So you will remember that in 2013, Dr. David Braddock unveiled the rights of people with cognitive disabilities to technology and information access. This declaration was crafted by leaders in the field. We talk about in the disciplines of cognitive disability, public policy, computer science, special education, philosophy, psychology, all came together, and leaders in the field in developmental disabilities came together to draft this document, which really spoke to the philosophy of people having this right to technology for their lives at any point in time, and being able to access all of those pieces of technology. Today, we now have 541 endorsing organizations across the country. Within the last 2 months, we had 2 states who advanced legislation. We had legislation happen in California, and we had legislation in the city of Philadelphia, all stemmed from this excitement about advancing the rights. So this affirmation allowed us to be able to do something really unique, and that was the Declaration Implementation Grants. So this past year, we funded 6 projects to be able to demonstrate what implementation looks like in real practice. And I thought about describing each one of them and realized that I really couldn't do it justice. These projects have done such amazing work on the ground, and the best way for us to be able to demonstrate that is to show you what they have done. So with that, the Declaration Implementation Grants. So, thank you. The applause certainly goes to these wonderful programs and projects that we have been just supporting minimally to do the incredible work that they do over this past year. And I want to take the opportunity now to thank them publicly. And so if you're in the room, which I hope you are, and we're one of the DIGS recipients of this past year, I'd like to ask you to please stand. We have Sonia Richardson, Jerry Slayton, Katie Talercio. Oh, we got our crew over here. Jordan Jenkins, where are you? Brita Nelson, and Tanya Reglia, who is not here. Please give these guys a huge round of applause. And know that we expect to see futures where these projects themselves will go and do continually good work. This year you'll be able to hear some of the exciting things for the next round of the DIGS, the next round of the Declaration and Implementation Grants. They will be, you can see them in the poster session. We have Ability Beyond in Connecticut, the ARC at the capital area at Austin, Texas, Families at the Forefront of Technology here in Colorado, and Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered Tech Bridges for Inclusive Design. So be looking for those exciting things that are going on with our next round of the Declaration Implementation Grants. And a special thank you, of course, to Denver Film, who helped us put that video together. Thank you very much. All right, it is now my absolute privilege to introduce one of our founding donors, Claudia Coleman. Claudia, I'm going to do a little bit of introduction because she deserves some real introduction here. But for those of you who don't know, Claudia began her technology career when she joined Hewlett-Packard in 1971. She was highly successful in sales and as a marketing executive for HP and received their prestigious President's Club Award in 1986. However, since leaving Hewlett-Packard in 1992, Claudia has really focused her talents on volunteer and charitable and philanthropic activities, including the Coleman Institute. She has been serving on boards of nonprofits for nearly 25 years, guiding them to realize their missions and measure impact. In 2016, the town crier named Claudia the Los Alton of the Year. She also led the Los Altos Community Foundation Leadership Education Advancement Program, the LEAD, passing on her generosity of spirit, her grace, and inspiring by example the value of community engagement. So with that, please give a round of applause to Claudia Coleman.
What a lovely intro. Thank you very much. You know, I have to laugh. Misha Dohler, our first keynote speaker this morning, he leaped on that stage with his red shoes, and I was so darn impressed. You know, he had all of this energy, and I thought, you know, why can't I do that? I've been working out 3 or 4 days a week, and then I thought, oh, gosh, you know, I've got heels on. So I decided maybe that sort of entry for my introduction, for an introduction, would not take place, but that was impressive. I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker today, Fenrose VR. Well, what does VR mean? It means he has a very long last name and no one can pronounce it. So throughout his profession, and probably all of his friends, he's VR. So I've tried to do it. It's Voluparampal Rashid. I called his office, and his administrator said she wasn't too sure how to pronounce his name. So VR is his last name. Fenrose is a senior vice president and head of globalization services at SAP. It's based out of Palo Alto. He is responsible for the global reach of SAP products. He started the industry's leading autism initiative, Autism at Work, in May 2013, where SAP made a very bold commitment to hire 1% of their workforce on the autism spectrum. The corporate goal by 2020 is to employ 650 people on the autism spectrum. Currently, nearly 120 employees fill more than 20 different positions, and the program is active in 9 countries. He is a parent of an autistic child. Fenrose will share his journey of discovery, from his own son being diagnosed with autism to starting the internationally recognized Autism at Work program at SAP. From starting the world's largest inclusion event, India Inclusion Summit, to writing the best-selling book, Gifted, Inspiring Stories of People with Disabilities. The Autism at Work is now a Harvard business case. Fenrose's own life experience as a parent of a differently abled son has been one of extreme emotions, from disappointment to hope, from pain to joy, from anguish to love. During his presentation, he will cover lessons learned from his life experiences. Please join me in welcome Fenrose.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Is that, yeah? Thank you. Claudia, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I wish my parents were here in the audience, because my father would have been very proud and my mom would have actually believed everything she said. This is such an honor. Thank you so much for inviting me and giving this opportunity to speak here. Every time I hear such introductions, I always confess one thing, and that is Providence played a helping hand in whatever I was able to do. And I think we are all actors in a series of coincidences. I have no clue. If somebody had asked me 6 years back, this would be the journey I would take, I would say no chance, right? But that's what life is all about. What I want to do in the next 45 minutes, if you allow me to, is to tell a few stories and break a few myths. I have a presentation, but if you are okay, I will tell stories and not show the presentation. Is that a deal? Is that good enough, right? Yeah? Good. You can clap louder whenever you want to. No problem. Yeah, I've worked in the corporate world long enough to have heard the word death by presentation, right? This is post-lunch session, so I will tell stories. If that is okay, I want to tell a few stories from my own life and break a few myths. And these are all stories. Most of them are documented, so you can go and search all of these stories. But there are very interesting insights, which I hope can be takeaways from all of you. But before that, I'm so happy to be here in Colorado again, because this is very special, because what happened was, when my son was diagnosed with autism, now 6.5 years back, 7 years back, I had no clue what to do. Somebody just said, if you can, meet Temple Grandin. So somehow, through various network, I got connected to Temple. And then I wrote to her, Temple, this is who I am, and I would love to come and meet you. Is that possible? She said, okay, come for lunch. Only problem was she didn't realize that I was based in Bangalore. So I took a flight. It took me 36 hours to reach here to have a 1-hour lunch with her. And then I flew back. But I must confess that 1 hour was worth the travel. And since then, she's become a very dear friend. I came here again 2 years back to invite her to speak at SAP. She has spoken at our conference at the India Inclusion Summit. So she is just incredible. I'm so proud to know her. That's my personal association with this beautiful place. So thank you once again for inviting me. Let me start by sharing my first story. So I was heading SAP in India. SAP is a global multinational. For people who don't know, it's a $120 billion company, one of the largest tech companies in the world. Started in Germany, but has headquarters in 100-plus countries, or offices in 100-plus countries. I was the CEO, managing director of the R&D, or the engineering unit in India. And this was the largest R&D unit outside of Germany for SAP. So I had around 5,000 engineers working in my organization. And we had a large campus of around 25 acres of land, one of the most beautiful campuses in India. But people who don't know India, there were multiple challenges that we faced. One of them was very basic, and that was we had a regular power shutdown. Right? On an average, between 4 to 6 hours of power shutdown in the city. Now, if you're in the tech world, the one thing you need to do is to have power, right? Otherwise, you can't work. So you need to generate power. So all the offices, all the large corporate companies had their own power generating system inside the campus. So underneath the big campus, we used to generate our own power. So when the power goes down, we can use the power that we generated. And so I used to go on a weekly round of the campus just to see if everything is working. While going on one of my rounds, one of my head of facilities came and said, Fenrose, I have a problem. And I said, okay, so what is the problem? And he said, you know what? Nobody wants to work in this department, in the basement where the power used to be generated. And I'm like, but why is that a problem? Why don't people want to work? He said, every time we hired people, they worked for 3 months and quit. And I said, why is that? And he said, it's a very noisy place. It's a very noisy place. So we kept hiring people, and they kept leaving. And somehow it was becoming non-viable. And I was thinking in my mind, okay, so I don't know what to do about it, right? So I happened to tell this to another friend of mine. And he said, Fenrose, the solution is very simple. This is not rocket science. Just hire a deaf and mute person. And I'm like, shit, why didn't I think of that? We hired a deaf and mute person, and he has never left SAP since then. It's pretty simple. But the problem is, human beings are so inherently biased that we don't see the obvious. All we needed was a person who would understand how to take the electricity readings, have some basic clues to make sure how it functions. He actually thrived in that environment. And I was thinking, this is not just a problem in SAP. Every tech company has this problem. But nobody is thinking in a completely different manner. Actually, in one decision, we could provide jobs for hundreds of people who are deaf and mute, who would want to do that job. It's a great win-win situation. It's a employment for one. It's a business advantage for the other. And my core belief is that we have to find solutions which are a win-win-win for everybody. for the individual, for the organization, for the society. When we can find that solution, I think magic happens. Now the problem was, this was a one-off situation. This was just pure coincidence. Me going on a walk, somebody telling me this as a problem, I talking it to a friend who telling me the solution, and I having the ability to implement the solution because I was the head of the company. So I could make some decisions, even though my organization said, Fenrose, this is too difficult, I don't know how to handle it. I said, no, nothing doing, just do it. Now the problem is there are hundreds of such opportunities out there. It's our inability to make those connections happen. And I've been thinking for the last 7 to 8 years, how do I scale this? Can technology be a solution to make these connections happen? So luckily, last year, I happened to meet Windsurf, who's called the father of the internet. And he's been trying to solve this problem too. So he invited me to a conference called the Innovation for Jobs. And he said, Fenrose, I heard what you did with autism. Can technology help scale this? So it's not dependent on a few individuals, but technology will make those connections. The problem is, all the technology solutions that exist today is fundamentally biased. So it doesn't solve this problem. People say, why can't LinkedIn do it? LinkedIn will not do it. LinkedIn doesn't say that we are looking for deaf and mute people in an electrical department. That doesn't happen. So we need to design solutions, and Vint and David Notfors, the founder of i4j, and we are working on trying to solve this problem at a fundamental technology level. And what we are trying to say is that let's not amplify the disability, but talk about cool abilities, the exact opposite. So everybody who has a disability has a cool ability. What is a cool ability? So if you're autistic, then we don't talk about the disabilities, but we talk about attention for detail, the ability to do repeated tasks, etc. If you are blind, we will say you have an enhanced sense of other senses. We start mapping the cool abilities, and we start looking at what are the jobs that are available, and then magic happens. Once we shift that narrative, I fundamentally believe there is a job for everybody. Now, what is also happening in the technology world is that we are creating a complete gig economy, which means that if you're profoundly disabled, you don't have to go to work. Work will come to you. You can do 2 hours of baking at home and make money. But the problem is we're not able to make that connection with your skill, that I can bake good cake. And there is somebody who wants good cake and who's ready to pay for it, and you can just do it at home and make the money. So there is a fundamental flaw in the design which I am confident technology will solve it, and we will get there. Which means the narrative has to be changed. If you look at every technology magazine in the world, you look at Wired, you look at any technology magazine, and you look at the coverage in the last 2 years, you look at what the cover says. Every cover says that because of machine learning, because of AI, we will lose jobs. This is the common narrative. I actually believe it's the other way around. Because of technology, because of machine learning, because of AI, we will create more jobs. Because jobs by itself will have changed. It's not about going to a company to get a job. The job will come to you. You can work for a few hours. You can just focus on the skills that you have. That's the narrative that we need to have. And that's why I call my presentation, everybody is good at something. It is our inability to find what you're good at and provide the jobs and opportunities for you. That's the first thing that I wanted to share. The second thing which I want to share is almost everybody whom I met, they think that the space of disability is a non-viable business. Oh, there are very few people. I don't think you can make money if you build a solution for people with disabilities, so on and so forth. And I'll tell you 3 or 4 examples to break that myth. The first, and this is proven by data, is that 10% of the world's population at least is disabled. Yeah, this is United Nations data, this is World Economic Forum data. Every country you will, so on an average, this is 10 to 12% who are people with disabilities. My belief is 100% of the world is disabled because we all have some disability. I can't sing, you can't run, etc., etc., but forget all of that. Forget all of that. Even if we go by the traditional definition of a person with disabilities, 10 to 12% of the world's population is disabled. Every person with disability has impacted the life of at least 4 to 5 people, at least. Which means the parents, which means the siblings, which means the grandparents. I have an autistic son, I can tell you, he's changed the life of at least 6 of us on a daily basis, if not more. Which basically means if 10 to 12% of the world's population is disabled, at least 60% is directly impacted by it. Who the hell says this is not a viable business? Why is healthcare the number one issue in this world? Because it impacts everybody. So when businesses come and tell me, Fenrose, let's not build solutions for people with disabilities, I say you're completely wrong. You're missing the point. My mother was absolutely fine till a year back, is now not able to walk, is on a wheelchair, and she will have, she's on a wheelchair and she's going to undergo multiple operations, a knee replacement therapy, etc., etc. You know one lesson? We are all going to land on a wheelchair sooner or later. It's only a matter of time. If you're not disabled, if you think you're not, you're going to become. Let's be very clear on that. So if anybody and if businesses come and say this is non-viable, this is a myth. We need to break that myth. And I've seen this time and again. Let me give you an instance of this. At my conference 3 years back, one of the young kids, 24-year-old, she built a solution, an online marriage portal for people with disabilities. Because she found that every portal has a problem that people with disabilities don't go there because nobody wants to disclose that they have a disability. This is the marriage portal, right? I don't know what's the most common one here, but people don't go there. They don't feel safe. They feel they're an outlier. So she built something called Inclusive Love, IncLove. So people with all kinds of disabilities can go there, date, they go out on parties together. They just feel in a much more safer environment. She had offers from Google, Amazon, and all of that. She said, no, you know what? I'm not doing any of this. I think this is a problem that needs to be solved. Brilliant girl. A year later, I saw her on one of the covers of the most prominent Indian magazine, and I sent her a message saying, her name is Kalyani. Kalyani, congratulations, I read about you. I hope you're doing well. She wrote to me, Fenrose, I've got a lot of coverage, but no money. And I'm going to shut down my business after 3 years because none of the venture capitalists think that building a solution for people with disabilities is viable. They can't make profits out of it. And I'm like, this is completely wrong. This is not true. So I was at the Tokyo airport when I got that mail from her. And I said, how much money do you need? And how much time do you think you would be able to before you raise some funds? She said she had gone to 78 venture capitalists across the country. Everybody said, great idea. We don't want to fund this because there is no business behind this. And she's not been taking salary for close to 12 months. And she said, Fenrose, I could do with $1,000 to $1,500 per month. If you give me 6 months of time, I think I'll be able to raise funds. I said, let me go back home. I'll wire you the money. No questions asked. You're not paying this back to me. When you become a millionaire, you can. But now, no strings attached. I want no shares, nothing. I just want your dream to be fulfilled. Guess what? I actually forgot to send her the money. She didn't ask me. She didn't send the bank details. But after a month, she said me she raised $1 million. What happened, and she goes around the world talking about it, she said, if you hadn't made that phone call to me, Fenrose, I would have shut down the next day. You gave me hope. I didn't even pay her. I just told, I believe in your idea. I believe in your idea. Send me your bank details. She didn't send me the bank details. I forgot in my traveling schedule. But within 4 weeks, she got $1 million. She's one of the most successful entrepreneurs now in India. She wants to build this solution across the world. There is a myth that building solutions and businesses, I've been in the corporate world for 20 years, people don't get this. Because we are all having a fundamental bias that it is a non-viable business. People don't even see the data that's in front of them. Let me give you 2 amazing examples why people don't see this. I don't know how many of you know, all of you would have watched the Olympics in Brazil last year, right? There was something incredible happened at the Olympics. I don't know how many of you know this, but this is something mind-blowing. The top 4 finishers in the Paralympics at the 1500 meters race ran faster than the gold medalist in the regular Olympics. Do you know this? The top 4 finishers in Paralympics for 1500 meters in the T15 category, or T13 category, I don't remember that because that's for visually blind, for blind people. They ran faster than the gold medal winner, broke the world record against the normal people. But they were not allowed to run against the normal people. They were faster. I'm like, and nobody knows about this. So the fact that people with disabilities can't do things is a myth. And there is enough data to prove this over and over and over and over again. I met the national Paralympian coach in India. India, it's a pretty bad, sad state when it comes to people with disabilities. It's a taboo, nobody speaks about it, etc., etc. She said, and he came and introduced me to this incredible runner who's visually challenged. He was, I think, he was the fastest 800-meter runner in India, visually challenged. And he came and he said, Fenrose, I have a problem. I said, what is the problem? He said, I want to change his running from 800 meters to a different category. And I said, but why do you want to? You said he's the fastest. He said, we have a problem. There is nobody faster than him to show him the direction. So the problem is, I don't know how many of you know how it happens. If you're visually challenged, how are you going to run in a circle? Any guesses? They have a runner in front whom they have tied to. They have a string tied to them, so they show them the direction. Now in India, there is nobody faster than this runner. So it's like, how do I practice? And I'm like, boy, which world are we living in? So I'm going to change him into 1500 because in that category, there is one person who runs faster than him, but he may not get a medal. Bad luck, like. This is incredible. Guess what happened the other time? We actually released a movie about him at the Inclusion Summit that I run every year. There was this national wrestling champion. He's deaf and mute. National wrestling champion. He wants to go to the Olympics because he's beaten the national champion in wrestling. But then the Olympic committee does not allow him because he's deaf and mute. I'm like, but he's better than the gold medalist. No, but he can't hear the signal from the referee. You know what it is? The referee has to whistle. He's deaf and mute. He can't listen. And I'm like, but technology can solve this very easily. I mean, it's just give a button, he'll get a shock in his hand, he will stop. So is that a problem? No, but the world body doesn't allow you to do. I'm saying, change the world body. This is incredible. And I have seen this with my own eyes, that there are so many people who don't go up to the Olympics because the system has fundamental bias that they are less capable. We have to change that narrative. We have to change that narrative. Let me give you another insight, and this will blow your minds off. Right? Last year, every year you guys watch the Oscars, right? Before the Oscars, there is this game. So who is going to be the Oscar winner for the various roles? 2 days before, everybody's predicting, he'll be the best actor, he'll be the best actress. Can I give you an insight? And you can make a lot of money. Whoever is in the category of best actor or actress, if you have to put the money, go for somebody who's played the role of a person with disability. Statistically, it is proven that out of the last 27 Best Actor or Actress award, 17 of them have played the role of a person with disability. So it's not rocket science. If you want to guess, just go with a person who's played the role of disability. Rain Man started it. When Dustin Hoffman won the Best Actor award, since then, every year, the majority, the highest probability is when you play the role of a person with disability. If movies get it, if sports get it, Why the hell doesn't corporates get it? I just don't get it. I mean, this is out there. And I think that's the narrative that we need to change. Actually, it will be the other way around. Sports has proven that people with disabilities are not just better, actually have an advantage. So when the sports committee actually sat together, they said that blade runners will not be allowed to run with the normal people because they can run faster. I'm like, really? Actually, the regular runners are feeling now disabled now. Because they're like, no, please don't allow, this is cheating. This guy's on a blade, he can run faster. And I'm like, wow, world has changed. This will happen. I think we are seeing a lot of these things converging together, and technology will amplify that, make it faster, make it more accessible for people around the world. Let me share my third story, and then I'll tell you what the insights are. And this is a personal story, of course, and it's been spoken about, written about, but let me tell you how it really happened, because the Harvard case study does speak about, the genesis of the autism program. But I'll tell you the personal narrative from my side. So 2010, life was as good as it can get. So I was 33, 34. I was the youngest CEO of a global multinational in India. I was very fortunate that I got married to my college sweetheart. We both went to engineering, computer science together. She was a Hindu and I was a Muslim, and it was a perfect recipe for disaster. And in India, that's like an absolute no, right? I mean, this is Hindu and Muslims in India. They can never get married. In fact, my father and my father-in-law, they said, if you get married, there are going to be riots. And I'm like, really? Is that important? I mean, what's the big deal about it, right? But that's the society that we lived in. It took me 10 years to get married to my girlfriend and now my wife. And things kind of took off after that. My career was going incredible. I was the head of SAP in India. We had our son Vivan was born, incredibly good looking. And I think every parent says that, right? And I thought this is as good as it can get, right? Career is going well. Your personal life looks good. My in-laws and parents, they kind of got together. So things look good. Until one day I went for a dinner with my boss, and he called me to one corner, and it was a family dinner, and he called me to one corner and he said, Fenrose, I think your son has a problem. I'm like, he's just 18 months, he looks good. I think he's incredibly smart. Why do you say he has a problem? Because he saw that my son was not making eye contact. And he was using the iPad multiple times, and he was on a stroller, and he was always looking at the wheels of the stroller. And none of us saw that as a different behavior. Like, okay, this is a kid, he'll do what he wants to do. And, you give him anything, he used to spin. You give him a pen, he will spin, and he'll keep looking at it. And in India, we play a lot of cricket. I don't know if you know that, right? And there is a term called spinner, a person who spins the ball. And I'm like going around, my son is going to become a spinner. Like, he can spin anything. I'm like, okay. And here is my boss who says he has a problem. I'm like, I'm not very amused to hear that. But anyway, he said, Fenrose, I think you need to go and check out if there's a problem. And I'm like, what do you think is the problem? He said, I don't know, just check if there's something called autism. And I'm like, what is autism, right? I have no clue. So anyway, I kind of went back home, didn't tell much to my wife. I did a Google search on what is autism. So I went to Dr. Google first, because Dr. Google has all the answers. So I said, okay, let's go to Dr. Google. I said, what is autism? And then I read a little bit about it. And then I said, what are the, say, 10 characteristics of people on the autism spectrum? Then I looked at it, and the first one was, okay, does not make eye contact. I said, check. Does not respond to names. And I'm like, check. Does the same things over and over again. I said, check. Is not social. I said, check. He sometimes does toe walking. I'm like, okay, check. I'm like, shit. there seems to be a problem. He was only 18 months old, so he had not started speaking. So, but my parents said, he's a boy, he'll speak when he's 3 years, don't worry. When he speaks, he'll speak a lot, so be happy that he's not speaking now. And I'm like, right, so, but then the problem was, in India, nobody spoke about people with disabilities. And we had a bigger problem that autism was not considered one of the disabilities in the disability bill, which meant that there was no special needs schools, there was no education, there were no hospitals, everything was done by a few private people. But I managed to go to different hospitals. We first went and checked if he has a hearing problem, and all of that we tested. And finally, we landed up in the doctor who invited both of us to the room and said, Fenrose, your son is autistic. And I was like, okay. We didn't, after that, me and my wife didn't speak. We went back home. We drove 30 minutes. My son was behind. Me and my wife didn't speak to each other. I went into the bathroom, locked myself for 30 minutes and cried. And I'm like, there goes my perfect life. Because I'm in a place where there is no education, so he can't go to school. There are no medications, so I don't know where we will take him. And the society doesn't like the fact that you have a disabled child, so you don't speak about it. And for a month, I went in complete denial, depression, everything that a lot of parents go through. Then I had a phone call that changed my life. So I had a mentor whose name is Dr. Kiran Bedi. She's been a great social worker, has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, I think 7 times now. She's a Magsaysay Award winner, which is the Asia's Nobel Peace Prize. She's been a very dear mentor for me for many years. And so for a month, I had completely not spoken to anybody. Right? She called me and said, Fenrose, what's your radio silence? Why haven't you called me? Is everything okay? And I broke down and I said, you know what? Vivan is diagnosed with autism. I don't know what to do. And then she said something which was incredibly powerful. She said, Fenrose, 95% of the people spend their entire life not knowing what their purpose is. You are incredibly lucky that the purpose found you. Use the fact that you have a special needs child to not just make a difference to him, but hundreds and thousands of people who may not be as fortunate as you are, because you have the network, you have the financial means, you have the intellect. Use it to not just make a difference for your child, but for hundreds of others. If you make that as your purpose, you will transform not just your life, but thousands of people. And that was like a switch in my head. Like, you know what? You get into one switch and you switch on, and life changes. And the last 6 years since then has been by far the most meaningful time of my life. What happened was, the next day I went to work, and I told to my chief of staff and all my assistants, this is what I'm going through. I was open about it. I was extremely vulnerable. And I said, what is it that we can do? I had no clue what to do. We started doing small things, very small things, right? One of the things that I did was spoke to a lot of parents, lots of parents who all had, special needs child, and I said, what's your number one concern? All of them said the number one concern is they don't know what to do with the children after they are gone. That's it. That's the number one concern. Everything else is okay, but that they don't know what to do. And imagine if you're in a society like India, where it's not just a taboo, there is nothing there. There is no assisted living, there is nothing. And it was so painful that once a father told me, Fenrose, my wish is that I live one day more than my child. And that broke my heart. I'm like, how is it possible that any parent could wish for that, which is considered the most painful experience in life? Because that's the situation. And I said, I went deeper into that problem. I said, what is the problem? He said, the problem is people with special needs can never become independent because they can never get a job. And I'm like, why don't they get a job? Because, the systems are fundamentally flawed. It's not that they can't do things. It's just that the systems don't understand what they can do. And that got me thinking, and we did a series of things. And what happened was, very interestingly and accidentally, I saw Steve Jobs' iPad 2 launch. And there they talk about the impact of an iPad on autistic children. Because when you're autistic or you're on the spectrum, you're not able to make those connections happen. And what an iPad does is the point of action is the same. It's not like you have a mouse here and things move here, and people on the spectrum can't make those connections. If you remove that layer, and the point of action and the reaction are the same, they understand. That's why people are surprised. Why are people on the autism spectrum so good at using iPads? Because they don't have to make the connections. They can just do this. And they don't have to make those connections in the mind. And I got that as an idea. And I called my CTO and I said, you know what, do you have any old iPads, which you are not using it? Because now iPad 2 has come. I'm sure iPad 1, you're going to throw it away. Give it to me. So I collected all the old iPads that the company was anyway going to give away because they were using the new ones. I collected all of them and started the first iPad lab in India in a small place. And I asked my developers, if you have the time, go and volunteer and build solutions for children on the autism spectrum. That's how it started. It was called the Project Prayas. Started with just old, not used iPads so people can start learning. The second thing that was very interesting that happened is I read about Thorkel Sonne, and I think many of you know him, right? So he's the guy who started Specialist Turn, where he hired people on the autism spectrum. I was like, wow, this seems like an interesting idea. I spoke to him, I took a flight with my chief of staff, went to Denmark, spent 2 days understanding what he's doing, because his office is amazing. There are, 80% of the people are on the spectrum, they all do meaningful jobs. And I'm like, wow, this makes sense. And I had a team of 500 people who were doing testing. And what he tried his experiment, or what his employees were doing, were testing. So I said, maybe this makes sense. I came back, and the problem was in India, there was nobody who's gone to a university, because there were no universities for special needs children, especially on the spectrum. So they all knew how to do the internet, and they knew how to browse, but they had no college degrees. So for all practical purposes, I couldn't hire them because there was no, but you know what? I just said, it helps to use your power sometimes. And I said, I don't care, we're going to hire them anyway. We hired 4 of them on the autism spectrum, put them in the testing team. And these were all who probably went to 8th grade or 10th grade. But they were all sitting at homes and doing video games. And now they started to come to SAP. And over a period of 2 years, actually a little over 1.5 years, we proved that their outcome of them was better than the engineers. It took us 1.5 years to prove that, because they took some time for them to get used to it. But I proved that over 1.5 years that their outcome was better than engineers. But what was even more impressive was the following: that they never lied, they never asked for promotions, they never asked for salary hike, and they wanted to work on the weekends. And I'm like, where do you get such employees in the world? I mean, is this not a big irony that if we hire people with bad attitude, but we don't hire people with incredible attitude, who are honest, ready to work on weekends, doesn't want anything? And I'm like, this is a fundamental flaw. What happened was, Forbes then wrote an article about this, and that's gone viral. It calls everybody is good at something. I just gave an interview and I said, I just don't get it. Why do people don't see this? That went viral. In 2012, I was selected as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum. In January, they invited me to speak at Davos, where the who's who of the world comes, all the CEOs of the world come. And there is a 5-minute slot which is called Thinking Ahead, which is about an idea that can change the world. You get 5 minutes to tell your story, but you have the world as your audience, right? As luck would have it, 2 things happened. CNN carried that story verbatim, exact speech of mine, they carried it next day online. And what was even more lucky is that my CEOs were there. 2 CEOs of SAP. They read it and they heard about this and they called me for a breakfast meeting and they're like, is this true what you're doing? And I'm like, yeah, I've been doing it for 2 years. I didn't take any permission. I just did it. And it's like, if this makes business sense, which it seems like it makes, right? These are good. You proved that they are as good or better. So why wouldn't you do it across the world? And India, by the way, is the most difficult place to experiment it because there are no systems in place. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And he said, what percentage of the people are on the spectrum? I said, 1%. So I said, okay, maybe we'll hire 1% of the global workforce. And I'm like, really? Are you smoking, or is this true? And I gave the speech on January. In July or August, at the largest technology conference of SAP, with 25,000 people attend, SAP made an announcement that 1% of its global workforce, at that time we were 65,000 people, will be on the autism spectrum. And the funny thing was, I wrote the press release because nobody understood what I was talking about, right? So I wrote the press release, and me and my assistant was like, Fenrose, did you hear it right? Did the CEO say 1% or 0.1%? Because there's a big difference. I'm like, let's not ask again, let's just type it as 1%. And then they said, anyway, it doesn't matter because nobody is going to read this story because this is a technology event. We are talking about, IoTs and cloud and machine learning. Who wants to know about an autism story? So don't worry, nobody would read it. So we released the press release. We did the press release, I think, on a Wednesday. On Saturday, the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer called me and said, Fenrose, the phone has not stopped ringing since the announcement. We have 3,000 unique media stories, and it is one of the largest written stories ever in SAP's history, more than any product launch. It still garners the highest story in SAP's 45-year-old history. And people still tell me that this does not make sense. And for me, the question is, a lot of journalists keep asking me the following question, and this is the third insight I want to give you. They say, Fenrose, how is it possible? And just to give you the context, this became a Harvard case study last year, so its business schools are talking about this. We were invited by Ban Ki-moon last year on the United Nations, by the UN, saying that every other corporate should make this commitment. So now IBM, HP, Google, Amazon, all of them are hiring people on the spectrum. Nobody has made the commitment like SAP has done for 1%, but they all see the business benefit. So we've made tremendous progress. But the question that people always ask is, how is it possible that all of this started in a place like India, where autism is not even known, where it's not even considered a disability, where it's a complete taboo? And why didn't people in other first world countries like US and America, where there are billions of money pumped in, why didn't they think about it? And here is my humble answer to that. Every transformation in the world has always happened at the edges. I run a 1,200 people organization. I can tell you, the core will never get it. It will always happen at the edge, and then it will become so big that the core will move to the edge. People say, why didn't the HR system do this? The HR people should have seen this coming. They can't see it. They asked me, Fenrose, what was the business plan behind this? I said, if I had a business plan, this wouldn't have taken off. This would have killed in every level. Because you have a bias. And systems have to be designed to overcome the human bias. There is enough evidence to prove that training and all the diversity and inclusion trainings and leadership trainings have added up to 0. I met Dr. Pfeiffer, who's a Stanford professor, who said, in the US alone, $14 billion are spent on leadership training. And guess what kind of leaders we created? Why are you smiling? That was not a political statement. Statistics have showed that diversity and inclusion trainings add up to 0 because we have a bias. You have to design organizations to overcome those biases. Because people come, they attend the training, go back and do exactly what they're supposed to do, because human biases are very difficult to change. You need to design organizations to overcome biases. What do I mean by that? Let me give you a very simple example of what designing means. If you know, in the 1970s in the US, this is a Harvard case study. In the 1970s in the US, only 5% of the orchestras, the top orchestras, had women. 5%. In the 1990s, that became 35%. From 5% to 35% in 2 decades. Anybody knows what happened? It was not that more people started playing the violin, or it was not that more women started getting better. It was exactly the same. Nothing had changed. They just did one design change, and that was they put a curtain when they were doing auditions. They just put a curtain when they were doing auditions. So the people who were selecting the orchestra didn't know whether the person on the other side was a male or a female. They selected them based on what they heard. The quality of the music improved, and it grew from 5 to 35%. A simple design change. You couldn't have done this by training more people. Not possible. We are all inherently biased. We do it at SAP at various technology levels. For example, when we do a screening of resumes, we don't tell the name and the sex or the photograph. They're not there. I'm looking at what you can do. These are simple interventions that can overcome human biases. So there's 3 things I want to share. I don't know how I'm doing with time. If you're getting bored, I'll stop right now. But, I just want to share these 3 fundamental beliefs. That the first is everybody is good at something. This is absolute. I'm absolutely convinced. I think technology will create more jobs, not less jobs. The problem is jobs are there. People are not able to find them. It is not that there are no jobs. There are always more jobs. If we can make those connections happen, I think everybody can meaningfully contribute to the society. I was invited last year at one of the big donors. They invited some thought leaders in this space, and they came and told me, and this person was sitting next to me, and something very powerful he told me. He said, Fenrose, I've earned enough for my next 3 generations. But I want my son who's special needs to earn $100 himself. Because it's not about money, it is about dignity. And I think everybody deserves that dignity. And it's our responsibility of providing that dignity. I'm a huge fan of Gandhi, and I've studied him for years. And he said, the true measure of a society is how you treat the marginalized. The true measure of a society is how you treat the marginalized. I've been here 3 years, and sometimes when I hear the CNN discussions, and I'm like, am I in the third world or in the first world? I have no clue. Because the discussions and the narrative has to change. I think we all have to do it. We have to collectively change the narrative. And I can give you hundreds of examples. It is proven, it can be done. It is going to be hard. But if anybody can do it, it is people in this room. Because you have a personal reason to do it. Right? As I said, I just happened to be accidentally in this journey. We are all actors in a series of coincidences. But once you're there, we need to do something for the larger good. So the first thing is everybody is good at something. The second thing is, if anybody tells me this is not a viable space, completely wrong. I can throw you a lot of data for that. Let me give you one personal example. At the conference at the Inclusion Summit in India, we've got great speakers who come. They're all people with different kinds of disabilities. The problem was, I realized that at least in the society that I was living in, that first thing is to change the mindset that people with disabilities are a taboo. Yeah, that's the first thing you have to shift. That's the flip thing you have to do. So you have to make them as role models first. And I said there was no conference which was only talking about people with disabilities, in India at least. And so we started the India Inclusion Summit, one of the largest events around people with disabilities. The speakers, many of them or majority of them have some disability or the other. But you have to mainstream that discussion. And I found such outstanding stories, right? And so I said, let me tell the stories in the form of a book. So I wrote the stories of 15 people with disabilities, whom I call the unsung heroes. And then I went to a publisher, and the publisher said, Fenrose, come back when you have a more viable idea. And I'm like, okay, why do you say so? I said, the last 3 books we published on people with disabilities didn't sell more than 100 copies. So why should we publish this? This is not going to make any money for us. And I'm like, I gave them all the same stories about why I think it's a viable business. They didn't get it. And I said, I'm going to publish it anyway. But finally, we got Random House to publish it. But here is the fundamental twist that we did. So the publisher asked me the 3 very fundamental. If you go to a publisher, they'll ask you these questions. So just be prepared if you're writing a book. Right? First thing they'll say is, okay, do you think, Fenrose, this book will sell in the airports? And I said, no chance. Because the only thing that sells in the airport is shortcuts to success, which is 1-minute CEO, 2-minute sales get, 3-minute MBA, 4-minute champion, 5-minute Paralympian, all fake stories. But because people are in a hurry at the airport, they want to read that. And I said, people with disabilities, no chance. Who has the time to read about them? So this is not going to sell there. Then they said, does the book have any sex in it? I said, no chance. There's nothing. So then they said, why the hell? And they said, have you published anything before? I said, no, I'm a first-time writer. But I think I have compelling stories. So you're a first-time writer. It won't sell in the airports. It has no sex. What's the chance of printing this, right? We changed the narrative. I wrote this book called Gifted. We did 3 things fundamentally different. The first thing we said, this book, who would want to read this book? Any guesses? Parents or people who have challenges, right? Where do you think people will want to read this book? Which is the best place to sell if it's not an airport? It's the hospitals. We stacked up this book in the hospitals. Because this book is not about disability, it's about hope. Where do you need hope? When you get into the hospital. Everybody lands there once in a while. Everybody goes there because they want to have hope. We said, this is not going to be in the airports. This is going to be at the hospitals. The second thing was, the title was called Gifted. So we said, the only way it will work is by gifting. So people bought not 1 copy, they bought 10 copies and gave it as gifts. She was asking me, yes, I said, can I gift the book to people here? I said, yeah, give it. So we used a pay it forward method. In 3 weeks, it became a national bestseller. And it's called a sleeper hit because nobody knows, because none of the bestseller list carries this. It keeps selling by itself. People give it, pay it forward. They buy it as gifts for others. It's now translated in 3 languages. It will get translated in 2 more languages. But here is 2 things we fundamentally did. We said the book is not about us, it's about the stories of the people in the book. So every book launch we do it with the people. The second is we'll not make any profits out of it. So I said, I don't want anything to do with profits from the book. All the money goes for the cause of people with disabilities. The people who published it, they said they don't want profit. So we brought down the price to $3. Because nobody's taking any profits. The idea was to spread awareness, to celebrate the human spirit, to celebrate people's disabilities, not to say that this is a problem. So the second thing I want to share is that change the narrative. The third thing I want to say is like what Coleman, this conference does. All of you can make a difference. All of you can make a difference. Kennedy beautifully said, each of us can make a difference and each of us should try. And I think this conference is a great testimony that, people like Bill and they've started something which over some period will become a movement. Because I think everybody can make a difference. I want to end with one last statement. If you a lot of people ask me, Fenrose, how do you manage this? What's your work-life balance? And I say, I give myself a B minus. If you ask my wife, she gives me a D minus. So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, but I think she said something incredibly powerful to me once. We have our differences. Why I should spend more time with my son? And she calls me an absentee father these days, but I hope I can improve there. But once she said something incredibly powerful. She said, Fenrose, you change the world for Vivan. I will change Vivan for the world. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Do you mind if I share the presentation in the next 2 minutes? Because my assistant put a lot of work to make it. At least I should show it to you once. Is that okay? Just 2 minutes. I'll just run it through you, just so that, because if she sees this, she should feel good that that's my son. Do you agree he's good looking? Is that, at least we are on the same page on that, right? I wish I had some role there. My wife says it was all her contribution, so. This is the journey of the Autism at Work. We started at a first autism workshop at Flexi Room. This was like a small corner room. And that's my boss, Tanya Roykert, speaking at the United Nations. Today we have hired 127 people in 20 positions in 10 countries. We will get to 650 by 2020. This is the Forbes article that went viral. So that's me. The girl is on the photograph whose face you can't see is the first girl we hired on the autism spectrum. She's a she's an absolute sweetheart to me. So even now I get letters and mails from parents across the world. When they read this article, they say, Fenrose, thank you for giving hope. And that's the Harvard case study on how it became from a small weekend project to a worldwide movement. This is, I think, the role of technology. I don't want to go into this, but one of the things that I'm extremely confident about is the cool abilities for jobs, that if we have a better matching system, and we will build that. In fact, I'm working with Windsurf and David Notfors. We will build this better matching system so that, if you know what you're good at, the job will find you. You don't have to find the job. If you're able to build that and crack that, I think we would have fundamentally changed the game. Education, again, I don't have to say this. I think we need to build more inclusive schools. One of the things we did when we started hiring people on the spectrum is we realized that we're starting it too late. At the job stage, it's too late. We need to go earlier. So we have now adopted 2 schools in the Palo Alto School District. And SAP goes and talks to these autistic children or people on the spectrum about what are the opportunities for them. So at least 3 years before they get into a job. Otherwise, it's too late. So I think we need to get this back into the schooling system at a much earlier stage. Otherwise, it is too late. Again, I think there is a myth that everybody should work at SAP if you're on the spectrum. Completely wrong. I always say I've been just fortunate that I'm in the tech world. If I was in the manufacturing world, I would have found a job for people there. Because there is a job everywhere, we just need to start changing those biases and you will find jobs for them. There's a beautiful example of the Rising Tide car wash in Florida. These people can do such incredible work. What is today the least available is honesty. That's like, there is absolute poverty on that. And that's what they bring to the table. I mean, why wouldn't you like to hire honest people? If that's the first thing you're looking for, people on the spectrum or any kind of disabilities, I think are fundamentally fundamentally honest there. So there's a job for everyone. I think there's no doubt that it needs a community. I think individuals can't solve the problem. This is so amazing because I come from India, and a lot of times people have asked me, because I moved here 3 years back, they said, Fenrose, what's the difference between, say, the US and India, or the East and the West? Can you explain this in one sentence? And I say the difference is, in the East, the community is more important than the individual. In the West, the individual is more important than the community. And I don't think one is right or the other is wrong. I just think we need to get the best of both of them together. Especially with people with disabilities, they are an indication to all of us that we need to live as a community, because individually you can't solve the problems. The communities can solve the problem, right? And I think the core is to build these communities. Parents, again, one of the things that I realized, especially trying to solve the problem in India, was there were no special educators. And if you need as many special educators as special needs, you will never solve the problem. So we said the best way to solve the problem is to make the mothers the special educators. So we actually started doing it very differently. I said the mothers can be the best special educators. So you don't need to go and now have special educators. They have personal interest in them. And then there is incredible statistics to show this. Right, one of my friends was a young global leader. She built something called, a lot of child deaths happen when they are just born because there is no heating systems, or there are those neonatal care units are not there in rural India. So she built a very cheap way to keep the children warm. Yeah. So when they're born, they're tied in this small thing, which is like $20, and that have massively saved lives. But what is the greatest insight is, this is what she told me. So they made these neonatal care small units, and they started to train mothers and doctors how to use them. And it was clearly shown that the mothers were way better than the well-trained doctors, because they have a personal interest in it. And that's why I fundamentally believe that when mothers become special educators, they do a far better job sometimes than trained educators. So I think we have to change our thinking who could contribute. Everybody can contribute, right? This is an example of the Inclusion Summit. As I said, it's the world's largest event. The one on the right is Haben Girma. I don't know if you probably heard about her. She's the first Harvard Law graduate who's blind and deaf and mute, blind and deaf. She cannot speak. She was there at the summit. She was awarded by Obama and others. This is a little bit about, people ask me how did this become a bestseller. I said it's a great example of goodwill gone viral. Good people come together, do the right things, and it just went viral. That's it. I think Steve is a great friend of mine, and he said something very beautiful. Said that imagine if a society had to put off the issues of civil rights until the genetics of race were sorted out, or denied wheelchair access to public buildings while insisting that someday, with the help of science, everybody will be able to walk. So we can't put this off. We have to do it now. We have to do it now. And that's my wife on the left. That's what she said. You change the world for one, I will change one for the world. Thank you so much.